Yeah. Oh, cheers, mate. Yeah, underrated. I'll take that all day.
Welcome back, people. The Insiders again. It's Matt here. This time, Darren's not joining us tonight. I'm joined by someone else, a special guest for you. On the eve of J-Bay rapping, it was a sick contest. Amazing to see Waves back. And me and Daz are going to do a full rundown on that. But before we bring you that, I'm having a chat with a special guest, shaper Luke Hart of Fourth Surfboards, collab Surf, Toy Factory, Form Surfboards, and everything else. A highly underrated shaper in the UK. Big things are going to be coming from Luke. We chat boards, UK surfers, what's going on in the world, and just really general chat. And Luke's a genius, and I think you guys are going to love this. So no further ado, here is, or is that the right even word? Anyway, here is me chatting with Luke Hart. Enjoy. So, welcoming to the Insiders a new guest, someone I've known for a while, someone I've respected for a long time, and someone who I think is underrated in what he does. We have Mr. Luke Hart of many hats: Fourth Surfboards, Form Surfboards, Collab Surfboards. What am I missing? Love
Whatever
Machine
works.
for the UK.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, cheers, mate. Yeah, underrated. I'll take that all day.
Oh, I think so. I think
Definitely.
oh yeah, I said it when we spoke with Stan recently. It's like I would be massively interested to see how one of your high performance shapes does if you pitted it in like a stab in the dark comp or things like that.
Oh,
Because
I'd
I've
love to. I'd love to have a go at that.
yeah, we got like we'll get the people to do a movement. We'll try and get you in. Or we'll try and do something different. But yeah, I think you're underrated. I think like I said, we've worked together um for a while, and having you come up to the shop and some of the intricacies that you see in boards that like I'm just like you see it from across the room and stuff. I'm like, Jesus, this guy's eye is mad. But um yeah, so obviously
I'm such a board geek though. It's something that's when you look at something and you appreciate it,
yeah,
and it started with an appreciation, but then when you look at something, I don't know, like some people collect art, don't they, or whatever, cars, but then you appreciate it and you start trying to learn about it and try and figure out, I guess, why you appreciate it so much, and then it goes on and on and on and on and on, and then like eventually I started making surfboards, and it goes on and on and on, and I'm such a geek with it. I love it. It's such a fun thing to do. I almost, in the weirdest way, disassociate it from surfing. As, for surfing anyway, like surfing's like a hobby for me, and then building boards is it's like a whole separate thing that I'm just, yeah, like you say, I'm into it. So
yeah.
it's just a bit of a board geek.
Is it one of those ones where you could say, like you say about hobbies and stuff, that if you didn't have if you didn't have a successful business in it and like the brands that you had, you would still want to get your hands dirty and make boards just for the passion of shaping?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I didn't. Yeah, for sure. I didn't start with any. Um, I didn't have a level I wanted to get to or anything when I first started. It was just so interesting for me. Now, funnily enough, how it happened was all quite quick. So I was on a trip, a surfing trip to Bali, and I had hurt myself on a reef, and when I've got big cuts and
Yeah,
you can't go in the water for a couple of days. And I was sort of, I was being a bit mopey, and my mate Mitch Corbett and Alan Stokes were on an animal trip, and their filmer had I can't remember what happened, but the filmer that they were supposed to take couldn't get into the country, and they had no filmer for the trip. And I had my camera with me, and they were like, "Oh, you can't surf. Do you want to film?" And I was like, "Yeah, sweet." So I started filming, and that led on to a couple of years. But I kept looking at people's boards. That's all I was filming and just watching people surf and going, "Oh, that looked rough," because of and I was always assimilating it to the boards.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if it was the same trip or, well, it obviously wasn't the same exact trip, but because I was in Australia at the time, but it was the same period of life of traveling as a young surfer. And my mum was working for Nigel Semmons, and she asked for a catch up while I was over there, and I speak to mum. She said, "Oh, yeah, the guy I'm working for, she's just doing admin for him. He's got a job in the surfboard factory." And I was like, "Mum, see if I can get that job."
Yeah.
At the time, I'm like about to sign a plastering contract for God knows how many meters of plastering over the next year, going back into a really good money, and then just it all just came up like oh, he wanted an apprentice laminator, and I was like, yeah, fuck, I'm gonna do it. And
Yeah.
then I started building boards, and it was all because of that. I think if I hadn't got on the camera and then started watching surfing and really linking it to surfboards, I wouldn't have got into it. That wouldn't have been such a big opportunity, because it was absolutely rubbish pay.
Yeah.
And it purely on the boards, and I didn't yeah, there was no like, oh, I'm going to get to this level, I'm going to get to that. It was just like, oh, I want to try some stuff. And yeah, I swear to God, the first 4 or 5 years, I reckon, of making boards, I never had a penny to my name. I only had surfboards. If I needed to eat, I'd have to sell a surfboard.
Yeah.
It was just constant, like it was just like a fixation. And yeah, that's kind of, yeah. So I didn't really I'm
Yeah.
sure it was always going to lead to it somehow, unless I never surfed.
But it was born out of a passion and an interest rather than some people go to uni and they're like, they have the path led out and that end goal is X job with X pay. But for you, it was more like you say, an artist, how many, or like an author, how many books do they write until that, and they get rejected and rejected and rejected, and then suddenly they get the big, like, obviously you put in the graft on the ground level and learn, like, obviously the laminating, and then throughout the rest of it shaping and more, and then obviously became your own stable as such. What what I
Yeah,
wanted to ask you about actually is
yeah,
is something, because I wrote it down, is with that, like you say, you was a young guy and you had that passion and stuff. Is there any worry in your like mind or anything about like young UK shapers coming through?
yes, there is. I know firsthand that there is. Well, I would say more the craft might fall short slowly, because so one, it's a silly choice to make. So if you're talking to your parents and you're about to go uni and all of a sudden you want to make surfboards, that they'll be like, no, you should go to uni. If you go to uni and instead of using your degree, you choose to make surfboards, people are going to say, well, that's silly because you've just got a degree. So there's no course that leads up to it to create an industry, and because of that, you're getting less silly people, or less people taking risks, I think is a better way of putting it. To get into the industry for the relatively low pay, for the there's you have to be pretty blooming good at it and do other things to become a millionaire at it as well. So you can almost see the level you can get to. It's an art form, and I think there is less people coming through because I guess they're being a bit more sensible. I think that's the best way to put it. And so what you're getting now is when people do it, they're not learning properly, so they're coming into it from like an I guess aesthetic reasons, and maybe not learning as deeply and inherently as they could about design, one, being a
Yeah.
shaper, and then build quality too.
Mm.
So you get a lot of one-man bands, and there are some awesome one-man bands out there for sure. Like I've just met one. Have you heard of Alero
Yeah,
Surfboards?
John. Yeah, John at
Yeah.
Alero. Very good.
Like they're sick. There's like purpose to his boards. They're really nicely made. The design is like, I get it. I'm looking at his board and I'm talking to him about the design, and I'm like, dude, you got some good shit going on together there. But for every one John, there is maybe, I don't want to be horrible, but there's a lot of people that
Yeah,
aren't
no,
like that.
100%. Yeah,
And
definitely.
they've got a passion for the industry enough to start, but the they haven't got the obvious facility and pathway to get themselves into a factory to learn from someone who's been doing it a long enough time.
Yeah, for
I
sure. I
think it's
think
almost a backward step.
I think for me when I speak, because like I've been super fortunate, like now chatting to you, I I've like had great chats with like Christian Bradley, Fipsy, even John Pizell and stuff. And you actually speak to these people, and they weren't they weren't doing anything at all. Christian's actually a little bit of an a different because he was younger. But like John Pizell, for example, he wasn't doing anything like big until like 40, 45, 50 years old, kind of thing. Like he was older in his years and he'd done. And I think sometimes to me, it comes across that like a shaper might have worked somewhere for 3 or 4 years and then they expect to be a massive brand and run their own brand and have everything. And it's like sometimes it's a bit of a longer game, it seems like as well.
Oh well, yeah,
But
because these guys, those two that you mentioned. So Christian Bradley was a sander before he was a shaper, so he
yeah,
knows how to build boards. And these guys have had a whole education in the back rooms
exactly.
before.
Yeah,
Shaper is a weird one because you get quite a lot of credit for the surfboard, but I promise you now, you can give me the best shape in the world, and I'd be able to fuck it up with a bad laminate, a bad sand, putting the fins in wrong. Like the shape it's integral, as is every part. But imagine I give you the best surfboard in the world, and I go, Matt, this is the best shaped surfboard ever. Here you go, and there's no fins in it, and you have
yeah,
to go surf it with no fin, and obviously it's not going to work. So you think of all the components to a board; they are all important, but a shaper it's more of like an egoic kind of, you get to be a shaper. That's what
yeah.
it feels like.
Do you think
And
it's a
and
little
I
bit?
think,
Yeah, do you think it's a little bit like when you've got a band and like a drummer is as important as the guitarist as it is the front man, but the front man's the guy,
yeah,
who all the girls want to smash.
yeah. I mean, I think you need a front man. You also need someone who's writing the songs, and lyrics and melodies,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
um, for anyone to try and stand at the front of it. Well, personally, I always feel a bit weird about it. I don't consider myself. If you have to ask me, I don't say I'm a shaper. I make surfboards.
Yeah.
I make surfboards. I love laminating. A laminate is a laminate controls flex, and if you and so, as do the components that you're all pulling together to make the surfboard, the construction methods and materials used, they're all creating weight and flex ratios that you're going to feel in the shape. And they're just as important, if not in certain areas of shaping, they're more important, like flex. And, that's why you don't see a whole ton of EPSs on the tour. You know, it's
Mm.
it's no secret. It's like good surfers don't rush to surf EPS epoxy boards when the waves are really good on the most part because of the flex to weight ratios.
Yeah.
And that is from a build perspective. That's not a shaper. That's someone who's designing surfboards is going to think about that sort of stuff. But a shaper, like the helm man, I guess, is not. He's not going to be able to do much in his shaping bay with the blank, without all of those thought processes gone in. It's just another part of it. But I guess it is like you've just said there. It's like front man of the band, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it goes both ways, doesn't it? Because if you um like Fourth, for example, that's your brand, or it's recognized as your brand. Um, if there's a bad Fourth and there's a bad board with a Fourth logo on it, Luke Hart's name is with that. If there's a great board with Fourth on it, Luke Hart's name is with that. And I think that's the
Yeah.
same as, a band or a singer who is a solo act, but they've got a whole band behind them. If they have a terrible gig, they're the ones who live and die by it as well. So I see why I see why it is, and I can also see why some people want to stay in the background and be the Ringo Starr to it all.
Yeah, well, yeah, I do as well. I'd love to be that guy, but at the same time, you have to make sales, and sometimes people aren't going to do that for you, and you end up, either wearing a lot of hats or going, oh bloody hell, I've got to do something on the camera again, or whatever it is,
Yeah,
and then but equally, I am happy to take the good with the bad. One thing, learning without any learning because you want to learn
yeah,
is you understand that any feedback is good feedback. You like,
yeah,
I mean, imagine when I was a bang average surfer, and imagine the first time like a really good surfer comes to me and orders a board, then like I'm going, well, yeah, I want it to be a really good board, but I also want to try something that I've been keeping in my mind. And you almost learn to be thick-skinned for the because I've made loads of shit boards, like so many fundamentally wrong boards, trying stuff. But
yeah,
then you learn, how to do the next one better, I guess, in short. And then it yeah, you ride out the bad things. It's good if someone
You've got
says
to,
to
haven't you?
me, oh, yeah, if someone says to me that, oh, my board didn't go very well, I don't think, oh, you're wrong, or I don't like hate them for saying it. I then go, yes, got a challenge, like I'm gonna work this out, and I'm
Yeah,
going to get them on a decent board, because that's where it's got us, and I need to understand how they got on the board they didn't like, because sometimes that's where you guys come in. They got to be sold the right board as well.
yeah, exactly. And that's the whole point as well. It's like if they could give you if someone just comes to you and goes, "Oh, this board's rubbish," and you go, "Well, why?" "Oh, I just didn't like it." Well, it's rubbish. That's not helping them or you, because then you can't. But if they say, "Oh, this board felt way too responsive for me," or whatever, or "Oh, it was massive," or whatever, then that makes sense. With that, how much feedback do you? Because you've got a good team, like, and I've mentioned it before, but you support British surfers like really, really well. And obviously you've got some long-standing relationships with Alan and Luke, and obviously some more like newer relationships, I guess, like where you've recently made boards for Stan and Pat and obviously you got Logan as well. How much of their feedback is crucial to yourself as well?
Um, it's yeah, it definitely is, because they're telling me. Well, do you know what? It's funny because everyone's different. So like the two that you mentioned there that are really really good, Luke, Dylan, and Alan Stokes. If I gave them a board that wasn't perfect, they could
Yeah.
find a positive out of it. They very rarely will have a completely rubbish board because they've got quite a lot of faith in their own abilities. So they'll go, oh yeah, I've loved this board for calves. And you can read between the lines and go, okay, sweet. So there's not much release off the top.
Yeah.
Or, oh, this board's so loose. Oh, I get you. So you don't want to be going too fast on it, you know, like you don't want to be putting it in. So like they'll always find a way of surfing a board. And they're really good at finding the positives of stuff and then holding back the positives. But then you get some people, honestly, Matt, some of it with shaping is like blooming. You're almost trying to read between the lines of it with their character, you know, with someone's character.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
that you're listening to what they're saying, but then you're thinking, oh, I don't reckon it is that. You know what I mean? And it's like you could be wrong at that as well. Like you get a really tall person and they're like, oh yeah, but you know, I don't ever go above a board that's 6 foot. And then you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe you should.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
if I did a board that was bigger than 6 foot, I'd technically be wrong. So you work with inside the parameters of that guy's giving you. You do the best you can, but the whole time you're thinking, maybe that you should open up your
Mind.
your possibilities. But yeah. Well, but some, you know, and you'll get little versions of that in maybe an inch here or that, you know, here or there on height or volume or materials. And then you'll get like really minute things like people, you know, they just don't like the look of a swallowtail, or they would never go on a quad, or you know, if they surf a twinny, they try and surf it like a shortboard. And if you're not, so it's like that. There's loads of little.
Or they might say something, you go, what fins have you got in it? And then the fins that they say they've got in it, you didn't have in your mind when you built it that they'd be using those fins. And then you're like, wait, hold on. Yeah.
That's actually a really big one. Because you do, like I say, ride a board without fins. You'll soon realise how important fins are. And because you know, have you tried those H4s?
Yeah.
So I tried those. I watched 2 people that I know really well surf them. It was Logan and Luke, and I saw their fins were different straight away. I knew I didn't even know what they had on the board, but I was like, what fins are they riding? And you could kind of see how little drag there was, but then how much sort of zing they had on the rail when they were sort of in a tight arc. And I said to them, "Oh, they're too loose." And anyway, I tried to set myself on a doofer, so my version of what I would ride as a shortboard, and they felt real twitchy and kind of. I guess I just felt a little bit unhinged on it. I couldn't quite trust them at any point, even though I could feel the extra speed. Then I put them in a mid-length in my BP Pro, and mate, it just made that board so much better. And I think that those H4s, like my BP Pro is like absolutely. I hate when people don't surf with the H4s, but then I also hate telling people to spend 140 quid on a set of fins as well.
That's really weird because when I use them, I put them in a Pukas Hyperlink, which is like a kind of like an everyday shortboard type thing, and was out of control. I didn't like it either. And then
you need massive ones, I'd say, for shortboards. I think you'd need to go like whatever size you tried, 1 or 2 sizes up, just to alleviate, to give the extra pivot from the lack of essentially it's drag that you're feeling, the lack of drag from how thin and stiff they are. But I know I felt the same thing. They're kind of like out of control, but not out of control, but like they're overly twitchy or something.
And then I actually used them in a flow stick, and was like, this, because the flow stick's such a sick board for like a wide range of levels. But I used it with quite a few different fins, and generally I surf it as a quad because I like the extra speed and the drive it gave. But then I put the H4s in it, and it was like I had the speed and drive, but the pivot point, which is probably exactly what you've got on your BP Pro.
Yeah, I mean that's what I mean. Like, but it's never getting sold as a mid-length fin, is it? But
No,
it
which is
is,
strange. And like you
or
say, it's
longer rail line board fin anyway.
I'm quite like privileged in the position with boards and fins that like I can chop and change a fin, and it's not setting me back 150 notes. Like does
No.
does make a difference. But do you
Oh hell yeah.
with your team? So say for example with Alan and Luke, do you feel like they have the relationship with you now where, and probably goes both ways as well, where they can say, nah, this board's not right, and or you could go and watch them surf and go, and they come out and go, oh yeah, it was okay, and you can be like, I've just watched you, it was amazing, or it was, oh, I can see it's a bit boggy or whatever.
Yeah, like slightly different for both, but yes, definitely. Then no one's afraid to say um when we got something we like. You got to imagine we're so far down the road.
Yeah,
Like when they try a board, they're not trying anything. It's not like a brand like it's almost impossible for it to be a brand new experience because we're coming off of quite a lot of experience between each other. So, but we know if we get something wrong. But like, yeah, so I've got a couple of stories of those lads. So Luke Dillon, I shaped him the best board I've ever shaped him, and I filmed him for the first surf, and I'm like, listen, Luke doesn't surf that much when he's home. He is very much he builds into his competitive surfing,
yeah,
so he doesn't over surf, and sometimes his weight can fluctuate a bit. He's just a naturally big boned guy. Anyway, I'm watching him. He's let's just say he's not as his at his peak physical
condition.
yeah condition at this time. And I give him this board, Matt, and I'm filming him, and it's like just zinging. It's like electric. Every turn he did is like the biggest turn. It was like every wave he has over an 8. And I'm like, he gets out, and I'm like, all right. And he's like, yeah. I was like, what do you reckon? He's like, yeah, I don't know. Was it a bit stiff off the bottom? I'm like, mate, that's the best board I've ever done. What the fuck are you on about?
Yeah, yeah,
And he was kind of like, I don't know if he's playing it down because maybe in himself he didn't surf the best, but I saw what I saw. And then the board flipping snapped. Like he snaps tails off boards doing turns because he's so heavy back footed for a turn.
yeah,
And he did that in El Salvador on like the first day on that board. So I never actually got to see it on like the juicy big old
yeah.
wave that we wanted it for. But yeah, but I was like blown away by what I saw, and he didn't give me that credit.
Do you think he was?
And
Do you think
then
he maybe thinks that you want more feedback? So in his head, he might have been like frothing out, but wanted to be like, "Oh yeah, did you think this?" Or
yeah, maybe.
sometimes
I
you
get
sometimes
excited.
you search for things.
I get excited about boards. So he's Luke would always try and bring me down to earth a little bit, maybe.
Yeah,
Alan's pretty good. Alan will probably he can probably tell you what a board's going to do before he's jumped on it.
yeah,
Um, and that's that he's got. I can't think how to explain him. He's like a feel surfer. You give him any board, he'll work out how to surf it well.
yeah,
Um, and have fun on it as well. Probably that's more where his natural mindset is. It's just he'll be having fun on that board. But the first two boards I did Alan, I did him a short board and he was riding 5'11. So I did him a 5'9 and he actually didn't like it. He held the board. You know, I'm like this kid, just like, oh my God, I'm making boards for Alan Stokes. I know he's got like a multiple £1,000 deal with another board company at the time, and he's buying my boards, you know, like
yeah.
I was absolutely stoked. And then he picked up the board and didn't even take it. Like I was like gutted. And so the board sat outside my shaping bay for ages, and then it dropped out of the rack and got some dings on the rail, and it literally sat there for like a year. One day I fixed the dings in the rail of it, and I put a rail spray on it, and I put the board in our new showroom. And you're talking like a year and a half after I'd made it, and it
Yeah.
had never been surfed. All it had happened is it'd been dinged in the factory and repaired, and a rail spray on it. And he walked past it one day. He's like, "Oh, what's this?" And he picked it up, and
Yeah.
I lied. I just lied, and I was like, "Oh, I did it for you," and then I weren't quite sure about it, so I never gave it to you. And he's like, "Oh, can I have a go?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, do it, man. Take it out." And he loved it, and it became the very start of like us really working on like the single concave shortboards that I guess started me off in like how I think about boards. And yeah, it turned out being a magic board, but he actually didn't even blooming take it to the beach the first time I made it because
For
I
a
guess
year
it
and a
was just a bit
half.
different for him. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
That's funny.
he is good. Mm.
He comes across a bit like Mick Fanning. I don't know if you've seen the Mick Fanning stab in the dark, but he just says every board's good. Like, but then Stokesy has a way of like, you can tell when he's like, because when he loves something, he's like a puppy. Like that's how I think of him. And then when he doesn't love it, he's nice about it, but he's not like fully off the charts. Like that story's a bit like the Kelly Slater story with the. Have you heard the Brown Beauty story where they basically shaped in boards and one had been this is when Christian was shaping for CI in Australia and one got twisted, like one got warped, and they put it at
Only the best boards are twisted.
yeah, and he got they put it at the front of the batch of the boards that then, and Kelly was never met, and he came in, just took the front one and went for a surf, loved it, and he won like 5 events in a row on it. And he said it's the best board ever. And then like after the season, after he won the world tour or the title that year, they had to tell him that board was you was never meant to touch it. It was warped, like it was like twisted.
Well, Tom Curran's favorite board was twisted. Twisted boards give you a curve that is really really hard
yeah,
to do by hand because your shaping is just basically a contradiction of curves. Like how many curves can you get working for you without the other curves getting in your way while that's happening?
yeah,
And it can get stuff out on the other rail out the way quicker. So you're technically depending on what way you look at it, you can go around a corner quicker or you can transition from rail to rail quicker without losing any hold.
yeah.
So like twisted boards, it's funny, but yeah, I know loads of people whose favorite boards are twisted, and I'm positive that if you get it twisted in the right way, like goofy to natural, it's probably a very subtle version of an asim that we need to look at rather than the extremities of asims.
Yeah.
But funny you to say that because I think I know what board you're on about, and like, wasn't it just like the golden era of Slater before he went on the epoxies, like
I think so,
on
yeah.
tour,
Yeah.
like 11, 12, like it kills me watching him surf now because he's
Oh,
obviously
same.
just as good, but like some of the boards, why does he ride the boards he rides? Kills me that does.
It's same because you just want to. It's a bit like like really quickly. I just fortunately had chats with Morris Coe. He came over and he showed me some footage of Geordie Smith riding some reverse V, like longer rail line boards at J Bay, and then I watched Kelly versus Andy at J Bay. Like Kelly was a 6-time world champ, so like this is way back.
2007, 2006 sort of thing.
Yeah, and he's on an AR, he's on an Almeric, and he's against Andy. And to be fair, I think Andy wins the final, but Kelly wins it. And like the board are longer and the rail line's like sick, and like, and then you see him like a couple of years ago go out on a Cymatic and he could barely hold it in the water. Like, but
I know it's fucked. Like this is where like it. Oh, I surfing. You can't make much money in sport. I don't want to hold anything against any surfers for getting a few pennies doing royalty deals, but like Firewires fucking shit. And the shapes are brilliant. There's so many good shapes on the Firewire range, but you're talking about boards that don't flex in a natural way, and everyone has learned to surf and grown up surfing a certain flex pattern that felt good.
yeah,
and then all of a sudden you go, hey, try this. And it's not to say that if everyone grew up on Firewires, they'd have found a way to surf a bit different, but they don't surf the same. They just don't. And
Nah,
you can see it. Watch Rob Machado surfing his fishes when they're PU made out of the Cali factory, and then
most yeah,
watch him surf a fish when they're
yeah,
Firewire.
100%. Most of Kelly and Rob's boards, like when Kelly surfs Hawaii, which is often when he does his best surfing every year, he's on a PU board with a drawn on black stringer to make it look like EPS. And I agree.
There's so many surfers that do that.
Yeah, and there's the thing.
I won't say names, but I know of people that do that now. But I also remember firsthand. I can probably say it 'cause it's ages ago, but we stayed in the same hotel as Taj Burrow when he
Yeah,
first signed for Firewire.
yeah,
And he had I was like on the floor below him on the casino hotel in Hossegor, and he had Mayhems and they were painted like Firewires, but like if you were live, you could tell quite clearly they were
yeah, yeah.
Firewires. But I guess they look like Firewires enough on the footage
That's all it
or
matters.
whatever.
Really is like that's the funny thing about surfing is I say to a lot of people, and we've only got like a minute left, but I say to a lot of people like sometimes it's a sticker. Like wouldn't buy wouldn't buy a Pukas, but would buy a Lost board in Europe, and I'm like, it's shaped by the same person.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's the wonderful world of surfboards, mate. It's like there's it's the weirdest surfing is the weirdest sport. It's the best, but it's like we got the weirdest community, we got the weirdest people, but it's
Well,
fun.
you've just nailed on head it there. Surfing the sport. There's surfing the sport. So like it's watching Andy Irons versus Kelly Slater in a final. That's the sport. And then like my team riders competing, and that's the sport. But then me and you do a hobby that we're passionate about, and we go down the beach with our friends and check the swell and talk about it, and that's such a different thing. It's completely unsubjective.
Yeah,
No, it, it doesn't matter that it's subjective is a better way to put it. It's like this magic thing that you think about it backwards, and you're like, how do I even make a sport out of what I'm doing? But
yeah,
they try to, and then that leads to maybe like just a slightly falsified industry from the start.
yeah,
It's almost like this weird. I know that sales are sales in any sport, but it's just like slightly dishonest to everyone else who you're to sell surfing the sport. You need to turn it into the people that are doing it as a hobby. But really, that you don't need to be like Andy Irons or Kelly Slater to think.
I think you're 100% right. It is such a beautifully subjective sport that like there's a famous Dane Reynolds quote, well, it's not that famous, but it sticks in my mind, where he says about he's surfing a Lovelace Thick Lizzie in electric acid test, and says no one's on the beach with a speed camera telling you how fast you're going or not. It's just about how it feels to you, and that's what the hobby side of it to us is. It's like, it's like all good that Luke could go and absolutely rip the top off of one, but that'll feel just as good to him as what me doing like a super nice little high line going well fast on a 20 wheel. So
Yeah, but that's it. And like from a shaper's perspective, like Luke's going to help me learn the dynamics of a surfboard and relating it to a surfer, but then I can then transition that into being a fun board for myself and then for other surfers, and that's where the sport can link to the pastime that is surfing. But a lot of the marketing is done based on the sport, and I think it sometimes gets people stuck in a bit of it can be like a frustrating rut, especially when it comes to equipment.
for sure. And I think that's kind of part of it as well. Is weirdly for myself, I haven't had a new board for a little while because I feel like I've almost after a few years kind of dialed in like what I really like and what I'm enjoying and stuff. Whereas there's a lot of people out there who are continuously like they see a video and they want to surf like it, so they think that's the board that's going to make it happen, and then
Yeah.
they're like, oh, actually, I can't do that. Let me buy this board that's going to just make me have more fun, and then they start the cycle again. It's
Yeah.
like they're chasing it, but again, that makes it so
100%.
much fun. I do that.
That,
I do
yeah.
that. I swear myself off of shortboards. I'm like, no, like I'm just gonna ride like boards that I can ride, and then 2 months later, I'm like, I want to ride a shortboard. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like I get really, really stuck on boards. Um,
mm,
but what happens if I get a good board is it makes me surf better, or it gives me confidence, whatever way you want to say it. Probably just gives me confidence, doesn't make me surf better. But I feel like I'm surfing better. So then I go, oh, I need something that's a bit quicker to react, and I need some, and then I get pissed off with that board. So like I try and make it as basic as possible for myself, like split surfing into two things: catching waves, riding waves. And I cannot do the second thing if I don't do the first thing.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's how it works in my head. And when I say just, it's not just about catching the wave, it's about one, not burning your energy out having to paddle really, really hard. And two, do you not think it's often overlooked how much control you have whilst you've took off? So you've picked your line and you have control of that line from the get-go, because that's what good surfers do. And I think that's such an overlooked part of surfing for the everyday surfer, is like they scrap for a wave, they get up, they bumble to their feet, and then they're surfing. Where it's like that whole time you over scratched and bumbled to your feet, you actually lost the part of the wave you needed to really get the most out of it.
100%. That's something weirdly this year. I've been very fortunate. I actually had a surf here with Alan Stokes, and then a few times I've surfed with Harry Timpson. And afterwards, I spoke to them about it, and they're like, because obviously I try and watch them and be a sponge and stuff. And one of the main things is like they're taking off knowing what they want to do on that wave. So that they're looking as soon as Alan was like to his feet, and he was surfing here. It's not a great wave, but he was saying to me, he was to his feet and he was looking at the section. And he was like, I need to get to that section. How am I going to get there? And how am I going to time it right? Whereas, and that's something that I've like really tried to like kind of push into my own surfing to try and help me improve and have more fun. And it really helps as well. Like you take off and you're kind of like, okay, you're not taking off and then reacting in your mind like, what am I going to do? You're taking off with an idea. Okay, this is it's a closeout, so let me just one pump off the bottom, try and hit, like kind of thing.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
think that's a
yeah,
really really important thing, and I think that definitely is like about
yeah.
yeah
Mate, honestly, and like, I'm not saying it's the only way, but it is the easiest way. Oh shit, hold on. Sorry.
so good.
Rail length, right? Rail length will give you stability, drive. Um, it will put you on the track to parallelity of the wave quicker, and it will make you go forward quicker. So if you take all of those elements, then like try and talk yourself out of rail length. You're not going to be able to add anything else into that board that does those things. So without like generating it yourself, or not needing such a steady platform that you require that rail length. But you're talking 10% of surfers that can do that. The rest of us, rail length is going to not just cater for our lacks, but it's going to enhance what
Yeah,
we're doing. It's
yeah,
going to make it easier to be a better surfer. Like if I've got a heat against whatever Kelly Slater tomorrow, I'm not going to take a shortboard. I'm going to take my 6'4" BV Pro.
Yeah,
That's the board I will 100% surf the best on,
I
it's a 6'4".
I completely agree. I often and this is going to be an analogy that you're going to really like because I use this analogy a lot when I'm talking to customers about boards, especially like, people who aren't competing. When you're playing golf and when you look at what pros are using in golf, their irons are blades, and blades look the best by far.
Oh
And
yeah,
if you flush a 6 iron with a blade, like there's no better feeling. But one in 10 you'll do that, and then nine of the others you'll thin, you'll like you won't get it sweet, and your ball won't travel as far. And then there's cavity backed clubs that you'll hit 9 out of 10 perfect shots. The club just doesn't look as nice, and it's more like there's this weird vogue of having the shortest board with the lowest volume, like kind of thing. So why?
kills me. I
What?
don't
Yeah,
know,
what?
mate.
And
It
same.
kills me. But it also makes it lovely when you know you've got through to someone and they can start seeing the benefits of it. Because
Mm,
my kids have learnt to surf on single fins and twin fins, and I see it in all of them. Even Alicia, she's 21 now, but she's got a real grace and style to her surfing, and she
mm,
doesn't do much on a wave. She's very, very recreational. She'll just go along, but she'll catch tons of waves because she rides the right boards, and she's got a decent style going along the line where she knows how to keep the speed, and it's from learning with those longer rail lines, and never really having that I guess that need to get on something shorter quicker. And then my middle child, Jackson, you see it loads. He's 10, and he learned to surf on single fins and twin fins, and he's got such a nice style. He's 10. He shouldn't have a nice style. And you see it when he's skating because he's quite a good skater. He's just got this like drop knee kind of loose hipped
mm.
power from the bottom kind of style where, because from the age of 3 years old when he started surfing, he like had to engage the rail, and he
Yeah,
wasn't ever thinking then I need to get onto a short board. So it's like it will help everyone. And when you see videos of John when he was a little kid, like he there's so many videos of him riding really long. I know they're
yeah,
tiny still, but they're really long rail lined boards,
100%. And
and you see it in the style.
I completely agree. And also, like, if you look at like maybe two of the most stylish and kind of people's favorite surfers, where with Torren Martin and Mason Ho. Torren's boards is mainly on a 7 foot. Like the shortest board he usually takes, other than a really old style twin fin, is usually a 6'3". And Mason's grew up on his dad's and his uncle's boards, which were massive rail lines. Like,
Yeah.
so for
It's
some
so true.
reason, it's like I would 100% agree. I I've got more rail line in my boards in the last couple of years, and that's why I'm loving them more. And you don't. It's not a sacrifice just because your board's 6'4". You're going to turn it better. And also, I've found that when I do then jump on a short board, like a 6'0" short board for me, I'm like pretty tall. I can turn it better because I've actually got better technique now.
Yeah, so that's probably the ultimate key for these people who are, you know, reluctant to get these longer rail line boards. And I'm not saying get 7.6 mid length, just a slightly longer rail line. It doesn't have to be crazy. I've got a rule of thumb that nothing under 6.6 is a big board. So
Yeah,
just slightly longer rail line, but just own it. You don't have to have it as your sole board. Let it feed into your surfing and just see the results. But Matt, I just thought of something while you were saying about Torren Martin and Mason Ho. What about when you watch someone like Victor Bernard or Asher Pacey on like the little boards? Because
mm,
their style is ridiculous. and it does make you want to surf those little boards. But I bet if you looked historically at their surfing, they would have come from long rail line
Oh,
thrusters,
definitely.
and they got to the stage where they can surf those little boards and make it look like that. But that's like special talent what they do on those smaller boards.
100, especially Asher Pacey, because like I've got a 5.7 foamy, and when I half the time I try and pop up on it and I'm nearly missing the tail. I do not know how he surfs those boards that short. It's mad.
Nah.
But at the same time, look at like what like if you look at like I watched a video the other day of Dane Godowskis surfing, and he's on a old style, like, and he's on like this 7.4 single fin, and the turns he's doing on it are mad. And like, I wouldn't try and surf a 7.4 like that because I'd seen Dane. So why would I try and surf a 4'4" board because I've seen Asher Pacey do it? Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
it's,
now for sure. But they oh, it's just part of the fun, isn't it? I
it
guess
is.
to try it all out. I get it. I just wish there was a bit more. I feel like it's like a rite of passage. If you're going to surf all the shortboards and everything, at least do some homework on longer rail line boards. And I
Mm.
think it will pay dividends when you jump on your shortboards, rather than, if you taught someone how to walk with shoes too small for them, they'd kind of walk a bit funny. And then
Yeah,
you told
yeah,
them to run, and they wouldn't be able to run as far, and they'd have a bit of a funny run, and their toes would hurt, and it would end up being bigger problems that they might not be able to get rid of at a later stage in their life.
yeah,
That's like
exactly.
jumping on two small boards before you're gonna have weird style. You're gonna have picked up bad habits to cope with that board that's too small for you with your current abilities, and you're ultimately going to be one of those surfers who's weirding everyone out in the lineup because you're slapping the water and shouting.
Yeah, yeah. Which is what I do now, but with a longer rail line.
Yeah, it's funny. I get, obviously you just alluded to it. I play a bit of golf, and I do get angry at golf sometimes, but I never ever get angry at surfing.
Really?
It's
Yeah. See,
yeah, I've never thought about it as competitive. Like
no. The
I've
only
done, I
the
did
only
like
time I
martial
get
arts
angry.
growing up.
Oh, sorry, gone.
No, I was just going to say I did martial arts growing up, and it was fighting, and I love fighting. I've always have, and it's aggression, but you're agreeing to the aggression with someone else, and you're supposed to do it. But then surfing, like, how can you even want to be angry out there?
Mm. I get the only time I get angry surfing is with myself when I mess up a bottom turn or something, and then as you see the wave just reel down the line and it's like perfect. And the only time I ever get angry surfing is I get angry with myself. But I don't get, yeah, I mean, I don't start punching myself in the head. I just call
Yeah.
myself a
Well,
few names and then paddle off.
are you even a real surfer if the best wave you ever had you didn't fuck up?
I surfed this weekend at Kimmeridge, and I I've done one of the nicest bottom turns I've done on a 6.8, and then completely bogged the top turn and watched this wave just run off. And I just wanted to just not. When I went underwater, I was like, I'm probably not going to come back up here. I'm just gonna. But yeah,
I
it's
I always do it when it's when I'm nervous. Like if we're surfing big waves, I fuck up at the start because I'm like, I just like I need
mm,
to settle into it,
yeah,
and then even if I'm having a really good surf, it won't be like, oh, I'm having a real good surf, so I'm not messing anything up. But by that, if I've messed up a decent wave, I'll almost think in my head, it's all right, you got another chance. You'll go, you'll go
yeah,
again. And
yeah.
I just don't get angry, but I do, mate. I honestly, when I remember one time surfing at this, I won't say the name, but it's a secret spot in the UK in the northeast, and it was really, really big, probably the biggest and most lined up I've surfed it. So I went down with Tom Butler, and it honestly, mate, like some of the best waves I've ever been in. and the paddle out at this certain spot is horrible when it's big because it's not like the easiest access from the rocks.
Mm.
The bigger it is, the gnarlier that is. And I'll be totally honest with you, I was absolutely shitting myself. And I paddled for a smaller one because I thought it was a nice shaped wave, and I'd be honest, I pulled back on really good waves because I was scared, you know.
Yeah.
And then I was like, right, you're being a dickhead. You've already wasted some weight because at the time it was only me and Tom out there. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning. Like it wasn't like I was wasting waves for anyone else, but I was missing waves that I could have paddled into, but I was just shitting myself. So then I went on. I tried. I was like, right, I'm going to commit to this next wave coming in. It was a smaller one, and I felt better. And I paddled for it with everything, and I didn't get it. And I turned around, and just the biggest set you've ever seen. I've never seen such a big set at this place. Was just on the horizon, and it just ate me up, mate. It swallowed me, and it was like God saying, "Stop being a pussy."
Yeah.
And I got literally went all the way into the rocks. I was contemplating, I was nearly crying, fully grown man, nearly crying, contemplating not even paddling back out, and then got my shit together and paddled back out. And I still fell off loads of waves, but the fear had gone after that. That was like as bad as it could happen.
Yeah.
And it did get a bit smaller throughout the session actually, but it was mate, I got some really good waves, and I definitely, if you were watching me surf, I messed up some really good waves as well. Probably one of the best surfs I've ever had.
That's what it's all about. The little internal battle. That's the thing. It's you against yourself, basically, when you're surfing.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the beauty of it. Like it's just so good. But
it's the same as golf. That's why I like golf. I find it the same. Like you go to the same course, like you go to the same beach every time, or you go to the same beach a lot. You can look at the forecast, but you never exactly know how it's going to play and what it's going to do, and you have to be reactive. And it's a battle inside your own mind, really, to get that stupid little white ball in the hole. And I think it's the same with surfing. Apart from, I'm lucky that I've never really had, I guess, an end goal with surfing on a session. Maybe, I don't know, but what a sport, mate.
There's a lot of ties over, but it is cool. Well, that's sick, mate. I think we'll wrap it there because, otherwise, me and you could talk for hours about it. But super appreciate your time coming on, and
no worries.
We'll get you back on with Daz as well because he's got like the most interesting views, and he'll ask you some random questions about what you have for breakfast and stuff. But sick for your time, and we'll speak soon, mate.
I don't eat breakfast because I'm intermittently fasting at the moment.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
There's the rabbit hole that he'll go down.
I'll come on whenever. I love it. I listen to loads of podcasts. That's the first one I've ever done, so I've really enjoyed it. And yeah, man, I thought we'd do more board geeking actually, to be honest, but we ended up just seeing the fat, didn't we?
Always the way. It's just like you end up just fucking. We plan for this stuff and it never goes to plan, so that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I've really enjoyed it, mate. Thanks for having me on, and speak to you soon.